That is Delta. That is Delta storm condition. My name is William Colgan, and I'm a senior researcher in glaciology at the Geological Survey of Denmark and Greenland. All right, just the two of us. In 2017, Gayus announced the start of the Camp Century Climate Monitoring Program. Camp Century is an abandoned military base that was active during the Cold War in the near-surface layers of the ice sheet. And when it was abandoned, snowfall buried it, and now it's sort of an entombed military base, some depth below the ice sheet surface. And so it was a base that supported up to 200 people a year. It covered an area of roughly 2 kilometers across. It had everything from places to live and stay warm, kitchens, church, surgical theater, power plants. It was a whole little city. And all of that is currently abandoned in the ice sheet. It's essentially an entire military base that was never meant to see the light of day again. One of the main reasons we have the Camp Century Climate Monitoring Program is because we are not really very certain what's going to happen with Camp Century in the future as climate changes. When Camp Century was built, the U.S. Army engineers deliberately chose a site that received no melt during the summer. But now Camp Century does receive some melt every year. Some models suggest that the site might begin to experience net melt by the end of the century, meaning that instead of snowfall each year, there's actually melt cutting away the ice. So when you talk about re-exposing an entire military base that was assumed to be previously isolated, then there's a lot of things that can happen. So understanding precisely what controls whether Camp Century comes back to the surface or not is a big focus of the modeling we do within the program. Camp Century today looks like nothing special. It looks like any other site on the ice sheet. It's just the white ice sheet and the blue sky, flat in every direction. The very first thing we did when we got off the plane is sort of establish a safe camp, put up your tents, get your heat source and your water sources working. And that can take quite some time because you move slow and things don't cooperate in the cold. Scientifically, the first thing we did when we got to Camp Century was start installing instruments above the ice sheet surface. So instruments to measure how fast the ice is flowing, instruments to measure what the weather is. And once we had those easier instruments done, then we started drilling into the ice sheet to take out samples from the ice, to measure properties of the ice with depth, to put in instruments to depth, like measuring the ice temperature, to make sure we had knowledge that the ice temperature in the heart of the debris field is still quite cold, and it is. They came back at minus 23 degrees Celsius. We right away start taking radar profiles. It's the only way we can see into the ice to try to see what's down there and where it's located. So to collect that data, it's rather manually intensive. You have to drag a very sensitive ice-penetrating radar unit in a grid pattern over the debris field. And now we have all this radar data that we're trying to interpret where things are in absolute space. So this is a radar profile from Camp Century. It goes about 1 kilometer across, and then it goes from the surface down to 110 meters deep. And you can see the bright layer here is a melt event in 2012 at the site. Then the next bright layer down here is the actual layer from the 1960s when the camp was active, when Camp Century was active, and that's where people were walking around. And then just below that, these little pockets here, those are the actual tunnels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 main tunnels right there. And then you can see everywhere around at different depths and spots are the little debris pockets we're trying to map. Camp Century is still facing society as a bit of a choice, in that if society does very strong climate action, it can prevent Camp Century from being re-exposed at the ice sheet surface and everything will remain frozen as it is today. But if we fail to do very strong climate action as a society, then it will put Camp Century on the trajectory to inevitable exposure by the end of the century. So it's really important to understand we still have a choice about Camp Century, whether or not Camp Century is exposed in the future depends on whether or not we reduce our emissions today.